I wanted to go back to this page in the book because it shows our journal. And then from this journal, we went and we posted into the ledgers. Remember what the ledgers look like? One page for every account that we have. When we're ready to move those numbers from the journal to the ledger, we're posting. And then we're keeping a balance. Remember that balance that we were keeping in these last two columns for the ledgers? Okay? That balance right there is the number that we're going to need to go to the trial balance, which is what we're going to next. Okay? So I wanted you to know where those numbers were coming from. All right? Now, go ahead and flip in your book to page 176. So on page 176, really we're looking at the next couple of pages, but they don't really have page numbers. Okay, and they're kind of stiff. All right, so they really stand out in the book. But this is basically the steps to creating the trial balance and the worksheet. Okay, and we're going to go through these steps, but you'll see that they're right here in the book if you need to come back to them here as well. Just because they want them to stand out. It's someplace that you can come back to. Actually, the previous book had like plastic overlays, so you could like lay the plastic over and see how it starts changing. Oh. But this one did it differently. Okay. All right. So preparing the worksheet, and we're going to go through this today and make the notes page with it. Write the headings, record the trial balances, work with adjustments, extend balances, record net income, and be ready for our financial statements. Okay, so on the next page, you can see what the worksheet will look like. Okay, we'll have the heading, and then we're going to do the trial balance. This first column, the account title, is every single account that's in the chart of accounts. Remember the chart of account? Okay, whether there's a number for it from the ledger or not, we're going to list that because we could come back and use it later. Okay, so every chart from the every account from the chart of accounts is going to be written down. Then we're going to go to the ledgers and we're going to pull those numbers. Okay, that's step one. Step two are adjustments, and then I'll start talking about those a little bit and what they are today, but you'll see more as we go through things next week, what they are and why they're there. Okay, and then we extend numbers out to either the balance sheet columns or the income statement columns, depending on what kind of account it is. Okay, and then the last thing that we do is we do these calculations down here, finding our net income. All right, so it's all laid out here, but we're also going to do our own little notes page. Okay. Okay, so first we're just going to write down what this is. It's a worksheet. And it is not a permanent document. And what I mean by that is that it's kind of not official, in quotes. This can be done in pencil. When we finish, we can wad it up and throw it away. It's not something that somebody's going to come in and ask for to audit, or an investor or anything like that. It is just a worksheet for us to work through the numbers and get what we need, do the math to find what we need to find. Okay? So it's not permanent, and it's completed at the end of the fiscal period. Okay, so definition-wise, fiscal period. You remember what that is? Did you just write it down? Right? 12 months. Okay. Fiscal period. The fiscal year is definitely 12 months. Okay, the fiscal period could be 12 months. It could also be a month. It could be a quarter. Okay, but it's a time period set aside to do then at the end of it some summary information. right? To do our financial statements, to do a worksheet, to figure out what our net income is. Okay? All right. Then the next thing we need to do is write the heading. Well, I guess the first thing, really. This is number 1. This is the heading. And this is the who, what, when. Okay? And the who will be the company. The what is it's a worksheet. And the when, Austin. Is the date, but because it includes net income, we're going to have to use the words for the month, or if we were doing a year, it'd be the year or the quarter ended, and then we would put the date. And that's why my dots are there. For the month ended, because we want to know how big of a span is that net income from. Is it just for the last month? Is it for the whole year? Is it for the last 3 months? Okay. We need to know net income in that frame. Okay, a time frame, not just on a specific date. Okay, so we have to use those words. All right. Then number 2 is to get all of the account titles in from the chart of accounts. So this will be all accounts from the chart of accounts. So again, you just go look at the chart accounts and you just copy them all down. Now, one of those accounts is called income summary, and we haven't really used or talked about income summary yet, and we're really not going to use it quite yet again, but it's going to be key in this list because it's going to separate this group from this group. So go ahead and write down income summary. Okay, and everything above income summary is a balance sheet account. Do you remember when we did balance sheets? Way back in the beginning of the semester? Do you remember what was on a balance sheet? What groups? What major categories? Assets, liabilities, and owner's equity. So every account that's above income summary is going to be an asset, a liability, or it's going to be capital and drawing, owner's equity. Okay? And then everything below is going to be either revenue or expenses. Okay? It's an income statement account. Income statement, STMT, I have it abbreviated. Accounts. Okay, and so that's why we wrote income summary down, is because it's always kind of the turning point. We know everything above it is balance sheet, everything below it is income statement. Okay, and that matters when we get to these columns out over here on the right. Okay, because we need to know where to put the numbers. We're going to either put them here or we're going to put them here. One of those sets of columns. Okay? Then the third thing that we're going to do is we're going to get the numbers for each of these accounts. And we're going to get these numbers from the ledgers. So we're going to bring balances from ledgers. Okay, and then we're going to add these up. Okay, we're going to do a total for each of these columns. This is step number 4. And we have to make sure that our debits equal our credits. Okay, so these two right here must equal. Okay, and that's one of the reasons we go through this process, is to double check that we've put everything in the ledger correctly. If these two don't equal, we have to stop. We cannot move on. We have to stop and we have to figure out where a mistake it was. So first off, you'd want to check your math, right? Make sure you added it all up right. Then you would want to make sure that you brought the numbers in correctly from the ledger. You didn't flip numbers or something like that. Okay, and you put them in the right row. And those are just 2 quick checks to see if you made a mistake. If it's not fixed there, you're going to have to keep digging back. That means going back to the ledger, going back to the journal, maybe even going back to the source document. Okay? But you have to find the mistake. You can't move on without finding the mistake, because then everything after it's going to be wrong. Your income statements that you show to the world are going to be wrong, right? Okay, so you have to make sure that you're good at this point. Okay, all right. Must equal. Then step number 5. These are your adjustments. We're going to plan, and plan is a key word. Plan the adjustments. Okay, and the adjustments are what's been used up. Okay, and we will always have one debit and one credit when we do this. And you'll understand more of that when we get to this next week. But an example. From the very beginning, we've been talking about supplies. Supplies is an asset. We bought supplies, we put them in our cabinet. We bought supplies, we put them in our cabinet, right? Do you remember me saying that all the time? We buy supplies, we put them in our cabinet. All right? We bought paper, we bought paper clips, we bought toner and ink and Post-it notes, whatever. Okay? Well, did people use that stuff throughout the year? Yes, people used it. So we have to know how much has been used, right? So we know what we purchased and put in there because we've been keeping track of it in our supplies account. Okay? So now, at the end of the period, somebody has to go into that closet and count. How many paper clips do we have left? How many toners and ink cartridges do we have left? How many Post-it notes do we have left? And once we know what's left, we know how much we've used. Yes? Everybody follow that logic? Okay? So that's what this column is for. We have to go in and we have to count to see what we have left. And the difference between what we have in our ledger and what we have left is what's been used up. Okay? So that we get that ending number correct. Does that make sense? A little bit? Okay? So that's what we're going to do here. And we're planning it because, remember, this isn't an official document. Eventually, we're going to have to go journalize and post adjusting entries. You see number 6 up there? Okay, that's part of this chapter. Okay, right now we're just planning it, but then we'll have to go journalize and post as well. Okay, now for this column, these two columns, we're going to have to do totals as well. This is number 6, and they must equal. Okay, because we're going to make sure that we put in one debit and 1 credit. And I'll explain more of that on Monday. That's probably the most confusing part of this whole process is these 2 columns right here. Yes, staple them together, please. Okay? All right, so again, when we're looking at this down here, if they're not equal, you need to stop and go fix it and find the errors. Do not move on. Yeah, so these 2 and these 2. Okay. All right. Then we're ready to extend, what we call extend our balances to the income and balance sheet accounts. So again, everything above income summary goes to the balance sheet. So I'm just going to kind of block this off. Okay, and then everything below income summary is going to go to the income statement columns. Okay, and so this is step 7 and 8, what we call extend, new, or actual, because this is what we've actually counted, balance. Okay, and so that's coming from these previous columns. Sometimes we'll just take that number and transfer it. Sometimes we might have to do some math. So if we have cash, cash is always our first one, right? We have a debit balance for cash. There's nothing that gets adjusted, so there's nothing in these columns right here. So we just take that number that's a debit here and we extend it over here. We duplicate it right there. Okay? Now for supplies. Supplies is an asset. It has a debit balance. We've been buying supplies all year. But I just said we have to account for what we've used up. So we figured out what we used up and we put that in the adjustments column. So if we need to decrease supplies, am I going to put it in as a debit or credit? Credit. Okay? Because you have a debit, you need to decrease it with a credit so we can subtract, and then we end up with a new balance over here as a debit. What's the new actual amount that we have in our storage cabinet? Okay? So some of the times you're just copying numbers, sometimes you're doing a little bit of math to get those numbers updated over here. Okay? All right. Then we've got this little section down here. This is where we're going to find net income. All right? And so I want you to write this down. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it because you'll need to see the numbers as we go through this, and I'll emphasize it a little bit more when we actually start using the numbers. But we will do totals. Okay, so that's going to be step number 9. We total every one of those columns. And then in the next row, we are going to find net income, or it could be net loss. We hope it's not net loss, but it could be. Okay, and again, I'll walk you through that process when we actually have numbers there. It won't make sense today, I don't think, without numbers. Find net income, net loss. And then we'll total those numbers again. And then here we must equal again. So we're going to equal here and here and here. We do not want to equal on row 9 and step 9, okay? So step 10 must equal, step 11 must equal, step 9 we don't want to equal. And like I said, that'll make more sense later. We got one more thing to write down. Hold on. Okay, hopefully you've got a little bit of white space over here. And what I want to write down here are the 4 reasons for a worksheet. Why are we doing this whole sheet? There's 4 reasons why we do it.
Teachers, please excuse this interruption. Faculty and staff, please remember to stop by the faculty dining room during all lunches to collect your ceramic bowl and free homemade soup. For those who would like to buy a bowl and receive free soup, we still have 16 bowls that need a home for the price of $20. Thank you.
Okay, so the first reason is to make sure that our ledgers are correct. Making sure that debits equal credits right here, okay? So that our ledgers balances are correct with debits equaling credits. Ledger balances are correct with debits equal credits. Okay, the second reason we want to do a worksheet is to plan the adjustments. And again, the word plan is there because just because we put them here doesn't mean that they're official yet. We've got to go put them in the journal. That's our accounting document. Okay, this is just planning them, figuring out what they are. And 3 is to prep for balance sheet and income statement. Okay, because we extend those balances over there, we know what those numbers should be. And so when we get to that point, we're going to be able to just transfer the numbers again. And 4 is to calculate net income. And that's huge. Why is that huge? You know how much you made. That's everything for a business, right? It's about the bottom line. You hear people talking about the bottom line. Are you making money or are you not making money? Is it income or is it loss? This takes care of all your money coming in, all the money going out. Are you making a profit? And that's the purpose of being in business most of the time, unless you're a nonprofit, okay? You want to make money, right? Okay. All right, so on Monday, we will add numbers to this and go through the working together, but you'll have this as your notes page.